This story begins in the beautiful city of Florence, Italy, where a wealthy businessman named Arthur Daniels built his empire. Arthur was well known not only for his wealth and influence but also for his strict nature and traditional views on life. He had a single son, Michael, a 25-year-old raised in privilege, having attended the finest schools and lived surrounded by all the luxuries money could buy. But Michael was unlike his father. While Arthur cherished wealth and social standing above all, Michael possessed a kind heart and a free spirit. He had an affinity for art, music, and the stories of everyday people, the ones often overlooked on the streets of Florence. He became a beloved figure in the community, his compassion drawing admiration from many. However, this gentle side was something Arthur couldn't understand. To him, his son's interest in ordinary lives was almost frivolous, a far cry from the ambition and pragmatism he expected. Despite these fundamental differences, Michael held deep respect for his father. He always tried his best to meet Arthur's expectations. But the pressure was mounting as Arthur began to push him towards an inevitable responsibility: marriage. Arthur had decided it was time for Michael to wed, specifically to a young woman from another wealthy, powerful family. To Arthur, this union was a logical step, one that would secure the Daniels family's position in high society for years to come. Yet, Michael couldn't have felt more differently. He believed in love as the only valid reason for marriage, not alliances or family ties. To him, marrying without love seemed pointless and hollow, a notion Arthur dismissed as youthful foolishness. The disagreement grew day by day, their quiet conflict simmering beneath the surface. But a single encounter would soon change the course of their lives in ways neither could foresee. One day, while Michael strolled alone through the cobbled streets of Florence, he noticed a young woman he had often seen sitting by a corner, a beggar with a gentle, quiet presence. Her name was Lily. Though her clothes were worn and her eyes carried a hint of sadness, there was a strength in her gaze that Michael couldn't ignore. He stopped to talk to her, and in those few moments, he found himself drawn to her wit, her humor, and her kindness despite her circumstances. When Arthur discovered that his son had been associating with a beggar, he was outraged. To him, this association was nothing less than a scandal, an affront to the Daniels family's reputation. Believing he could quash Michael's romantic ideals, Arthur devised a plan. He demanded that Michael marry Lily, thinking that forcing this union would shake Michael out of his foolish views and bring him back in line with family expectations. But Arthur had no idea what he had set in motion. Michael was left stunned when he heard his father's command. The idea that Arthur would use marriage as a form of punishment was beyond anything he had anticipated. His father's demand wasn't just a suggestion, it was an unyielding order, a non-negotiable decision. Suddenly, Michael found himself at a crossroads. Obeying would mean surrendering his own values, his belief in love as the foundation of marriage. Yet defying his father could mean losing everything he had ever known, including his inheritance and the life he was familiar with. On the other side, Lily was equally taken aback. The proposal frightened her, bringing a surge of conflicting emotions. She was well aware that she didn't belong in Michael's world, and a part of her feared this might be a twisted joke from a wealthy man. But when Michael approached her again, he explained his dilemma and asked her to trust him. He promised her respect and dignity, regardless of the circumstances that had led them to this arrangement. Despite her lingering doubts, Lily accepted the proposal. The two were soon married in a small, unassuming ceremony, far from the lavish, extravagant wedding Arthur had envisioned for his only son. News of their union spread quickly through Florence's elite circles, stirring shock and disapproval. Arthur's friends, associates, and rivals alike questioned his sanity, speculating about the future of the Daniels family's reputation. However, Arthur was firm in his belief that this union would be short-lived. He fully expected Michael to eventually cast aside his mistake and return to his senses, having learned a harsh lesson about duty and family loyalty. But as the days passed, something remarkable began to unfold. What started as a forced, hollow commitment slowly blossomed into a genuine partnership between Michael and Lily. United by circumstances that neither had chosen, they began to truly see each other. Michael came to realize that Lily was not simply a woman from the streets, Nor was she just a reminder of his father's punitive act. She was intelligent, strong, and resilient, a woman with her own dreams and a heart that had endured unimaginable hardships. As they spent more time together, Michael discovered a hidden talent within Lily. She had a remarkable gift for painting, a passion she had carried silently even through her toughest days. Despite living in poverty, she had never let go of her art. Determined to nurture her talent, Michael introduced Lily to local art circles, connecting her with galleries and artists he knew. Soon, her paintings began to draw attention. Lily's unique perspective and raw, emotional style captured the interest of critics and admirers across Florence. What had started as a cold and unwanted marriage turned into something beautiful, a partnership both in life and creativity. During this transformative period, Lily crossed paths with a young gallery owner named Emma. From the moment she saw Lily's work, Emma became her biggest champion, sensing the potential that lay within her art. She not only promoted Lily's work tirelessly but also became a close friend, offering support as Lily adapted to the new life that had been thrust upon her. Meanwhile, Arthur's old friend, Benjamin, a wealthy and somewhat cynical businessman, watched the unfolding changes with curiosity. Initially, he had dismissed Michael's marriage to Lily as a temporary lapse in judgment. But as he witnessed Lily's rise in Florence's art scene and Michael's growing happiness, he began to wonder if there might be more to life than wealth and reputation. And then there was Arthur himself, watching from a distance. As Lily's art gained recognition and her bond with Michael strengthened, Arthur felt a complex mix of pride and bitterness. He had never foreseen that his plan would lead to something so positive. For the first time, he was forced to question his own beliefs and confront the possibility that his values might be flawed. As time moved on, the bond between Michael and Lily deepened. What had initially been a marriage forced upon them grew into a connection rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and eventually, love. Together, they built a relationship that defied expectations, a partnership that blended both affection and artistic collaboration. Lily became a respected figure within Florence's art circles, her works praised for their emotional depth and raw honesty, marking her rise from a quiet outsider to an admired artist in her own right. But life rarely proceeds without unexpected turns. At a prestigious gallery event in Florence, where Lily's artwork was featured among other celebrated pieces, Arthur made a surprise appearance. For months, he had kept his distance, reluctant to face the reality of his son's unconventional marriage. Yet something had changed within him, an unexplainable urge to witness, firsthand, the success of the woman he once deemed unworthy. He wanted to see what all the talk around Florence was about, perhaps even hoping to understand the appeal of her art. As he wandered through the gallery, Arthur's eyes fell upon one of Lily's paintings that instantly captivated him. The piece depicted a lone female figure standing in a desolate landscape, her expression both sorrowful and strong. The renowned art critic who had noticed the painting was deeply moved by its poignancy and asked Lily about her inspiration. With her usual quiet dignity, she explained that the image was a tribute to her late mother, a woman who had faced poverty and adversity with unbreakable resilience, always maintaining her dignity despite a life filled with hardship. Arthur, who had been listening to this conversation from a distance, felt a wave of shock and recognition wash over him. As he approached the painting and took in its details, he found himself strangely haunted by the figure in the artwork. There was something about the woman's features that struck a deeply buried chord within him. He felt a tremor of realization. This figure reminded him of someone from his past, someone he had once loved but had long since let go. Leaving the gallery abruptly, Arthur was engulfed by a flood of memories, his mind spiraling back to a time he had carefully hidden away. That night, sleep eluded him as he confronted emotions he thought he had buried forever. In his youth, Arthur had loved a woman intensely, a woman with whom he had shared a brief yet passionate relationship. However, due to family pressures and social expectations, he had ended things with her. This woman, as he now realized, was none other than Lily's mother. The weight of this revelation was staggering. The woman Arthur had scorned as unworthy, the woman he had condemned his son to marry as a punishment, was, in fact, his own daughter. Arthur was tormented by the truth. now bearing the knowledge that he had unintentionally forced his own son into a marriage with his half-sister. The shock and shame of this realization paralyzed him. For days, he wrestled with the enormity of his actions, his mind plagued with questions about how to move forward. How could he face Michael and Lily with this devastating news? How could he confess that he was the one responsible for the unimaginable pain and confusion they would undoubtedly feel? But as the days wore on, Arthur came to understand that the truth could not stay hidden. The only way to truly confront his past and perhaps find a shred of redemption was to reveal everything, no matter the cost. One evening, he summoned Michael and Lily to his mansion, requesting their presence with a gravity that neither could ignore. Though they were puzzled, both sensed that something monumental lay behind this unexpected invitation. When they arrived, they found Arthur visibly shaken, a shadow of the formidable figure they had always known. He invited them to sit, and with a tremor in his voice, he began to recount the story of his past. He spoke of a time long before he'd built his empire, a time when he had loved a woman passionately yet abandoned her because of the same rigid standards of status and reputation that he had tried to impose on Michael. As Arthur's words unfolded, a horrified silence fell over the room. Michael and Lily listened in stunned disbelief as the weight of his confession sank in. Arthur revealed that the woman he had once loved and abandoned was, in fact, Lily's mother. The very woman he had wronged all those years ago had borne him a daughter he never knew about, Lily, who had lived a life of hardship, unaware of her true lineage. The shock was unbearable. For Michael, it was a revelation that shattered everything he thought he knew. The woman he had come to love and cherish was, in fact, his half-sister. The father he had respected, despite their differences, had inadvertently woven their lives into a tragic tapestry of mistakes and suffering. And for Lily, it was as if her entire existence had been thrown into disarray. The man she had just begun to trust and rely on was now revealed to be her brother, and the father she had never known had been at the heart of her pain. As Arthur finished his story, he broke down, the weight of guilt and remorse overtaking him. He looked to his children, struggling to find words that might mend the pain he had caused. But there were no easy answers, no words that could dissolve the betrayal and sorrow hanging heavy in the room. After Arthur's devastating revelation, Michael and Lily were left utterly shattered. The truth had torn apart the fragile world they had built together, leaving them grappling with emotions they couldn't fully comprehend. Michael, who had spent his life looking up to his father despite their differences, was now forced to confront a profound betrayal. He had not only lost the woman he loved but also the image of the father he once respected. For Lily, the pain was even deeper. She had finally found a semblance of stability, a life where she was valued and respected. She had begun to see Michael as her safe haven, someone who saw her for who she truly was, beyond her circumstances. But now, to discover that he was her brother and that her absent father was the man who had shaped so much of her suffering, it was almost too much to bear. The days following the revelation were dark and filled with self-reflection. Michael decided to leave the city, retreating to the family's secluded house in Tuscany, hoping that solitude might offer some clarity. Lily, meanwhile, found refuge with her friend Emma, the gallery owner who had supported her from the beginning. Both of them needed time to process the enormity of what had happened, to understand how they could possibly move forward from here. In Tuscany, Michael was surrounded by silence, but the quiet only amplified his inner turmoil. He spent his days in deep contemplation, reflecting on his life, his choices, and the future that now lay in ruins. The path ahead felt unfathomable, tainted by a truth he could not escape. His thoughts were haunted by memories of the happiness he had shared with Lily, the rare moments of genuine joy he'd found despite the tension with his father. In those memories, he saw the love they had shared, even if it was now marred by tragedy. Meanwhile, back in Florence, Lily poured her heartache into her art. Each brushstroke became a release for the anger, sadness, and betrayal that weighed on her soul. Her paintings took on a new depth, infused with raw emotion and complexity. Emma encouraged her to channel her suffering into her work, urging her to find strength in her art. Slowly, Lily realized that despite everything, she still held control over her own life. Her identity and future didn't have to be defined by Arthur's mistakes or by the tragedy she now faced. In her isolation, Lily found a flicker of resilience. She began to understand that moving forward was possible, that the pain of the past need not define her forever. She resolved to live on her own terms, to reclaim her life from the shadows of her father's choices and the tragic bond she shared with Michael. For the first time since the revelation, Lily felt a sense of determination. After weeks of separation and soul-searching, Michael and Lily decided they needed to face each other. Both knew that avoiding the truth would only deepen their wounds. They arranged to meet in a quiet park in Florence, a place where they could speak freely, away from the prying eyes of the city and the whispers that had started to spread among Florence's social circles. Their reunion was tense, emotions simmering beneath the surface as they sat together in silence at first. Finally, Michael broke the silence, expressing the turmoil he had endured since learning the truth. He told Lily how lost he felt, how impossible it seemed to reconcile the love he once felt for her with the knowledge of their shared blood. The future he had once dreamed of now seemed distant, something he could never reclaim. Lily listened, her own heart aching with every word. She shared her own struggles, the confusion, the betrayal, and the deep sadness of knowing her father had caused so much pain without even realizing it. Yet, amid the heartbreak, she had come to a decision. With quiet determination, Lily told Michael that she was choosing to move forward. She would continue her life, her art, and her purpose, no matter the circumstances. Her mother's legacy, she felt, was too precious to let it fade in the wake of this tragedy. Michael, moved by her strength, found a glimmer of hope in her resolve. Despite the pain they both carried, he realized that he couldn't imagine his life without Lily's presence, even if their relationship could never be the same. After a long and emotional conversation, they reached an understanding. Though they could no longer be husband and wife, they would support each other as friends and partners in life, bound not by romance but by the unbreakable connection forged through shared experience and survival. Determined to find a way forward, they chose to face Arthur together. They knew he was racked with guilt, haunted by the consequences of his actions. Rather than seeking revenge or harboring resentment, they hoped that confronting him would bring some measure of healing to them all. They wanted to understand, to forgive if possible, and to find some sense of peace amidst the tragedy that had bound their lives in such an unimaginable way. Together, Michael and Lily returned to Arthur's mansion, the weight of the past pressing heavily on them as they entered the grand, silent halls. The air between them was thick with unresolved pain, but also with a newfound sense of strength, one they had forged through this ordeal. As they stepped into the mansion, Michael and Lily were met by Arthur, whose once confident presence had crumbled. He looked frail, aged by guilt and regret that had visibly worn him down. He led them into the large living room where so many family memories had been made, though now it felt somber and heavy with the unspoken words and unresolved conflicts that filled the space. The three sat in silence for a moment, each one grappling with the overwhelming weight of what was to come. Finally, Arthur, with a voice barely above a whisper, began to speak. He opened up about the remorse that had gnawed at him since the revelation, the regret not only for the choices he had made but for the pride and fear that had ruled his life, driving him to sacrifice love for reputation and status. In a raw, trembling voice, he admitted that he had always known, deep down, that his values were flawed. Yet he had been too afraid of society's judgment to embrace the truth. Michael, though still wounded, managed to find his voice and asked the question that had haunted him since that fateful day. Why Arthur had been so ruthless, not only in abandoning Lily and her mother but in forcing him into a marriage meant as a punishment. Arthur, tears streaming down his face, confessed that he had initially intended the marriage as a form of control, a way to mold Michael into the version of a son he wanted. He never anticipated the love that would grow between them or the devastating consequences of his decision. He had thought he could manipulate their lives without realizing the cruel irony that fate would play. Lily, who had remained quiet, absorbed every painful word, her emotions swirling between anger, sorrow, and a strange resolve. When Arthur finished speaking, she rose, surprising both men with the strength in her voice. She told him that despite the depth of the suffering he had caused, She was willing to forgive him. Carrying the weight of hatred, she realized, would only deepen her own wounds. Forgiveness was the only way she could free herself from the past and embrace the future with an open heart. Watching Lily's unexpected compassion, Michael felt his own heart soften. Seeing his father's remorse and Lily's resilience, he, too, found the courage to forgive. Looking at Arthur, who was now openly weeping, Michael told him that while he was willing to forgive, rebuilding their family's trust and love would take time and patience. It wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to try. Relief and sorrow intertwined as Arthur thanked his children, vowing to spend the rest of his life trying to make up for the pain he had caused. For the first time, there was a sense of release, a glimmer of hope that they could start anew. The wounds would not heal overnight, but each of them, united by their shared history and newfound resolve, was ready to take the first steps forward together. In the days that followed, life began to shift for Michael, Lily, and Arthur, each of them changed yet determined to forge a new path. The pain of the past lingered, but the possibility of healing had begun to take root. United by a quiet resilience, they each set about rebuilding their lives, hoping to create something meaningful from the wreckage left by Arthur's mistakes. Michael and Lily continued to share a bond, though no longer as husband and wife. Instead, they embraced a new partnership, one defined by mutual respect, shared purpose, and the strength that had carried them through such immense hardship. Together, they decided to use their lives for something greater. Michael took a renewed interest in his work, channeling his passion into cases focused on social justice, driven to help those who had been wronged or overlooked by society. His career took on a fresh purpose, and he gained the admiration of his peers for his commitment to justice. Lily poured herself into her art, her experiences now infusing her work with an intensity and depth that had never been there before. She became a celebrated artist, her pieces reflecting themes of resilience, forgiveness, and the power of transformation. Her friend Emma organized a special exhibition that showcased Lily's newest works, and the event became a stunning success. Critics and collectors from across Italy praised her artistry, drawn to the emotional depth that lay in every brushstroke. Through her art, Lily found a way to reclaim her story, transforming her pain into something beautiful and inspiring. Meanwhile, Arthur, burdened by a lifetime of regret, sought redemption through service. He quietly began supporting local charities, donating to causes that helped single mothers and people in vulnerable circumstances, hoping in some way to atone for the harm he had caused. He also began writing a book, a memoir of his life and mistakes, with the hope that sharing his story might serve as a cautionary tale. Titled The Price of Pride, the book, upon release, resonated with many, especially those who had struggled with the painful choices between family and social expectations. The mansion that had once symbolized the rigid expectations of the Daniels family gradually transformed. Michael and Lily opened it as a gathering place for artists, thinkers, and those seeking inspiration, allowing it to become a space filled with warmth and creativity rather than status and control. What had once been a symbol of wealth and influence was now a center for art and community, welcoming people from all walks of life. Years passed, and in a quiet moment, Michael and Lily stood together in the mansion's garden, watching a group of young artists immersed in their work. They exchanged a look that held within it a profound understanding. They had survived the unimaginable, and in the process, they had discovered a new kind of love, a love built on forgiveness, respect, and shared purpose. The story of the Daniels family became a tale retold throughout Florence, a story of how love, resilience, and forgiveness could transform even the deepest wounds. Arthur's legacy, once centered on power and reputation, had been rewritten by the actions of his children and his own search for redemption. Michael and Lily had learned that true worth lay not in social standing but in the courage to forgive, the strength to grow, and the compassion to uplift others. In the end, they each found peace in their own way, bound by a love that transcended convention and pain, and united in their mission to make the world a better place. Their journey showed that while the scars of the past could never fully disappear, they could serve as a testament to the power of healing, change, and the hope for a brighter future. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this story. Your interest and support inspire us to bring you more captivating tales filled with emotions, twists, and the complexity of life, love, betrayal, and redemption. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a comment and share your thoughts. We value your voice and want to hear what you feel. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new story, and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Thank you for bringing this channel to life with your views and encouragement. See you in the next story.